Nau mai, haere mai ki Aotearoa Rugby Pod. Welcome to the Aotearoa Rugby Pod, brought to you by Ashley and Martin Medical Hair Centres. One of the things we love about rugby is nuance. It's what separates it from so many sports. The grey areas of the rules and their interpretation are part of the beauty and the folklore of the game, as well as a source of change and some frustration. So we've sought out an expert, and we have New Zealand's most capped referee, Ben O'Keefe, on to answer some of the questions you've sent through over the last week, and there have been plenty. Later on, we'll dig deep into the EPC semis, where Canterbury and Otago showed their class in the semis and booked spots in the final. So who will win and why? And that's all before we return focus to the Test footy next week, when the All Blacks seek revenge against Ireland in Chicago. Plus, we have another Rugby Ready giveaway for a month of free training with All Blacks guru Nick Gill's training team, and of course all the in-depth analysis you've come to expect from James Parsons, not Bryn Hall this week. Instead, we have Ben O'Keefe on the panel. Ben, thanks for joining us, mate.
Thank you for having me.
I bet you love questions about rules.
I do. We, well, as a referee, you get them constantly on the field, and off the field as well.
Yeah. Are the players better asking questions about the rules, or are the fans more vitriolic in the way that they approach it?
The fans have a pretty big opinion about it always, during the week and after games. But no, players are pretty good. They sort of just take the answer and they move on. James did that quite well. Coaches are a bit different. Yeah. They come with a lot of clips post-game as well. But no, it's all for the benefit of the game, I think.
Actually, this just reminded me of something we spoke about a few weeks ago. Have you ever gone into the refs meeting with the coaches and the captain and bought the coffee yourself?
No.
Or do you just rely on them to buy you the coffee?
Yeah, you sort of sit there. You don't really want to be there as long to have the whole coffee. So you want to get in there, have a glass of water and get out. So, try and manage it like that.
You don't want to chin wag.
No.
Talk about the family.
Not really.
Fair enough.
The greasy captains turn up with 2 coffees.
Yeah.
And really just try to play the nice game.
Yeah.
They've got a few questions then.
Do you know the order of a number of referees, or do you just go with a flat white?
Normally you would send a text.
You send a text?
Yeah, because you normally organise it through text.
Yeah.
And then,
fair enough.
Smooths them up that way.
Yeah, well, all we're offering today is a glass of water, so
that's perfect.
You should be fine. We had so many emails come through. It's the most emails we've had since the Rugby World Cup final. So many people wanted to chat and ask you a question about all of these amazing things that they see and the questions that they have. And one of the first things that was sent through to me was a video from Sheree and Gillies Kaka, obviously New Zealand Sevens players, them at home watching the Bay of Plenty Wellington game, where a player puts his foot into touch but still manages to knock the ball in.
I don't get the rules. I do not get it. Okay.
He is touching the ball. His foot is on the line. Out. Thank you. Who was that? 5 metre line out to Wellington. And then, hold a minute, listen to this garbage.
The ball has not crossed the plane of the touch. The player has his foot on the line, but because the ball has not crossed the plane, he's able to tap it back in, which he does. The ball is then regathered and scored, so a try.
Look at the bro's face, yes, exactly.
Huh? So I can walk down the sideline like this with the ball in and standing on the sideline.
Yeah, and score a try.
Matthew Villiamu asked exactly the same question. So, essentially, this is what Matthew Villiamu said. The ref said that this is okay because the ball didn't cross the plane of the sideline. I've never heard of that. Lol. Just the same as the random rule where you can leap from outside the field, catch the ball and land inside the field when you plan it. Would love to see someone chase a grubber kick to the line, run outside, stay outside and then force the ball down for a try. Can you explain that particular piece of play and how that works with that rule?
Yeah, so, I think firstly, the fact that there's so many questions is great. That's what I want about rugby. Our job as referees is to try and, make it pretty clear for people to understand. So there are a number of rules like that you don't see often in the game. You might see it once every few seasons where it's a little bit, you haven't seen it, so it's a bit complicated. This one in particular, so a player can be standing out, so either their foot's on the line or they're in touch. If that ball is bouncing in the field of play, what they can do is they can actually just tap the ball back in, kick the ball back in. As long as it hasn't crossed the touch line, then it's play on. Now, the difference is if they go to catch the ball, then they're deemed to be in possession, so then they're taking the ball out. So there's the subtlety there that I think, in NPC, when we saw that a few weekends ago, they did a pretty good job with the technology available to go through that process. I thought the referee explained it pretty well to be able to get that outcome. So it's a rare one that we don't often see, but we're prepared if it does happen. We have to make the decision.
Do you reckon 50-22's changed that? Just because more teams do try to go for that 50-22 when the wing is out, and then they get that desperate
Well, I actually don't know how many players potentially know that they can do that as well. You know, so it is something that players try and stay in the field of play to try and get the ball. We saw that instance a few weeks ago. You'd probably say it was a mistake that the player unintentionally kept the ball in, and the rule meant that it was a play on. So I don't know whether they do it on purpose, but they could if they were understanding it now, like grubber kicks through, like our question came through. If they put a grubber kick through and they got pushed out, they could just tap it in if they knew the law, and then it'll be play on.
I have a feeling this will become more prevalent after this conversation.
As long as the ball goes backwards, obviously.
As long as the ball goes backwards, as long as they don't catch the ball, then they're in possession. The one, and it kind of leads on from this rule as well, is that in goal, if you're outside, if you're lying outside on the ground, you can actually score a try by being out. So I've only seen that happen maybe 2 or 3 times in my career, not in my games, thankfully, but it does happen, and then that's
imagine the debate. Like, you just think if you don't know that rule and you're a captain or a coach, like just imagine that would be a debate.
It's a tough one because the camera's on you and you have to try and explain this pretty succinctly for the world to know, and it can get pretty tough. So fortunately it hasn't happened in my games yet, but it will. Definitely will.
So I'm confused. So you can be lying outside the end goal. The ball is within the end goal, waiting to be forced to score a try. You can put your hand on it, it's a try. But if you run into the end goal and you dive in and you put your hand out and touch the outline, that would be deemed no try because you touched the outline. So you can have a small fraction of your body touching the outline while putting a ball down, and not get a try, but you can have your entire body out and on the ground and get a try.
Yeah, and that's a complicated part of it sometimes, because the difference that we're talking about there is not the position of the body, but it's actually whether you're in position or not.
Yeah.
So when you're carrying the ball, you're in position.
Yeah.
So as soon as you touch the outline, you're out, okay? But if you're not in position and the ball's in goal and you're out, if you're not in position, the ball's on the ground, you can just tap it and it's a try. So the difference is whether you're in position. So difficult. Probably not so easy to explain, but yeah, that's the current laws as they're written.
How do you keep all of these things in your head? Like,
It's just unbelievable. Like when we were talking to the green room, like there is just so much to remember. I think I've learned more than I did when I was a player in the last 15 minutes in the green room.
There's a lot of rules that we use a lot in a game of rugby. So the law book probably is that thick, and you have it on your phone now. You can't have it on the field, but you probably use about 10% of the law a lot. Okay, and then there's all these small things that come up, once or twice in the game. So, or a season, or maybe in a career. As referees, we do law exams, so we're constantly looking at these, the smaller details of the law. And that's part of the rugby. So you need to know the actual law, but then I guess, and how we're going to go into some of these other questions. You need to know the law, but how you're going to interpret them to actually allow the game of rugby to continue. So that's the hardest part sometimes.
How often are you examined?
So once a year. So in New Zealand, we have to pass a law exam to be able to referee at the level that we want to be able to referee at. At World Rugby, we do the same thing. So we're doing about 1 or 2 law exams a year. But honestly, constantly, after I referee a game, I'm always looking at the law book based on, have I refereed this decision correctly? Is it incorrect? We had one on the weekend that I just refereed about, what should the restart have been? Were we right? Were we wrong? So we're constantly looking at the law book to try and see how we can improve for the weekend after.
On the back of that question, because I didn't know that rule, but it's always been in play. That's right, isn't it? It's not like a new rule.
That's not a new rule, no.
Yeah. And then is that the same for the one where players are, because Mark James asks, when did the law change about being able to jump from the outside, the touch and into it? That's always been there as well.
Well, so about 4 or 5 years ago, World Rugby tried to change the touchline laws to make them a little bit easier to understand. And the big rule that changed was around the ball that was moving towards the touchline. So if the ball was moving towards the touchline and then I picked the ball up, then because the ball was moving, it was out by the opposition. Okay. The same thing for the dead ball line, and same thing for taking it back inside your goal line. If the ball had stopped and then I took it back, then I'd taken it back. So that was quite confusing to see if the ball would stop moving or not. So they just stopped that, so that's not a rule anymore. So they brought in these ones where, and I think what we saw maybe 2 years ago, I think we said the Hurricanes used to do it, Geordie Barrett used to do it, where he would be standing outside the touchline waiting for the kicker to kick the ball. As long as he caught the ball and landed in, it was play on. So then it became an option for kickers. Do they want to shave off an extra 10 metres, or do they actually want to make sure that they get the line out and kick it, 20 metres into the stand? So it sort of added that. But whenever a rule's brought in, when we're trying to make it easier, teams adapt, coaches adapt to try and coaches stretch it out. So we're always having to, I guess, tweak those rules and just the interpretation of the rules on the field.
Yeah, because I remember when that jumping in, happened to us, but the Canes did it to us sort of a pre-season game. And then I was talking to Corey Jane afterwards, and he was telling. So I think with all these little laws, or the other little laws that you don't use, I suppose that 90%, it only takes a creative coach or a very disciplined coach to try and work out how to not manipulate it, but how to use it to their advantage.
Yeah, it is, because in a lot of the rules that have come in, they have a ripple effect, don't they? So you change one rule here, then it's going to change the effect of what it means at the line out or an in goal. So and often these rules are changed in the office, so we don't know what it's going to be like on the field. So we do trial them in certain grades. So I know what we do in New Zealand, which is really good. So NPC, Super Rugby, we trial these rules, so then we can present them to World Rugby to say, look, this is how it's worked over 2 seasons. Here's the stats. This is why we think we should bring it into World Rugby, and then they may change it for the betterment of the game as well. So there's some benefit, I think, in the rule changes, but you get a smart coach like Corey Jane, they're always going to try and work out ways that it's going to benefit their team. So that's why I think you see a lot of teams now, they employ or they have referees involved with them. So New Zealand, referees are involved in every Super Rugby squad. Internationally, the All Blacks have referees involved now. France do, South Africa do, because of these rule changes.
I just think that's the best innovation, though, because it came in when I was still playing, and to have, let's just say, a friendly discussion, like right then and there, and you've got like a TV where you go back and you can rewind it and have the conversation where I don't think I've penalised, I should have been penalised, and the ref saying, and then to have that live learning, like the ability to pick it up and make adjustments whilst training I think is such a massive advantage for players, coaches and refs, I would say.
I think it's an advantage for the game as well, because if I'm talking to the team that I'm working with about how they can adapt or what they can do better on Saturday, it actually means that the referee's not going to penalise you on the Saturday. And then the game continues, we get a better product. So I think, all round, it's a really good change that we'll continue to do in New Zealand. I think you'll see most teams around the world do that as well.
Speaking of advantage, Buntu and Tebi asks, how long should an advantage be?
So advantage is probably the most subjective part of the game of rugby between referees, if we're talking about it in terms of consistency. There's no advantages either tactical or territorial. So you've either got a gain in ground, or you've either got a gain because you've got options to use the ball, so kick, pass or run. Now, as referees, we're trying to decide this for the teams as well, and that's quite difficult to do. Probably what's easier is the short advantage, which is a scrum advantage. So after a knock-on, the team gains possession. We might say 1 or 2 passes, you've got possession, then we'll call advantage over. The difference being that for a penalty advantage, because of an infringement that was a little bit more severe, like a player going off feet or a high tackle, potentially the advantage that should be gained for that needs to be at least the distance that maybe they're kicking for touch to get that line out. Potentially that's what some referees will use. It also comes down to the position of the field as well. So our team's trying to attack. Are they inside their own 22 where probably they're not going to be exiting? So really they just want the line out, so maybe your advantage will be shorter there. Or are they attacking and, maybe they go 3, 4, 5 phases, they get on top of the defence and they might have a chance of scoring. It's tough, and we try and be consistent between referees because we're always talking about it, but it's not always easy to do. It's a difficult part of the game.
Do you get feedback from the teams on advantage? Because I'm imagining, let's say, taking the penalty side of it, some teams like to kick to the corner and they'll want to take that kick. Some might go for the post, but others are looking to keep ball in hand. And to them, what advantage is quite different to what maybe the opposition team think advantage is. And do you have to take that into account?
We do. So that's part of like the coach meetings that I think we have before the game. So they'll let us know the style that they want to try and play in. And to be honest, the Super Rugby teams are pretty similar. So they all try and adapt and play the same way. So whenever we get questioned by a team about our advantage, it's probably we've called it over too quickly. They've actually wanted to try and play off that scrum, or they wanted to try and play off that era. So that's something that we take into account because, one of the great things about the Super Rugby teams in New Zealand is they do want to try and, the players, they want to try and score from anywhere. So we want to try and do that. And I had a game last weekend, the weekend before, I probably called advantage over 3 times, 2 went to tries, so that was a good use of advantage. But when we're running, we're constantly thinking, is this advantage over? Should I come back, give the penalty, and actually keep the game moving like that?
I always like to think of these things, it's like a little bit of it's a skill set. It's like a strong kick or a strong passing game for a player, a strong ability to know a ref's, I suppose, behaviour or trends really well in and around this area is potentially a point of difference and, I suppose, a test or game-defining difference.
Yeah.
Would you find?
I think so. Like there is the differences between the referees, but if you could bring it back to like what the advantage law is for, it's to keep the game moving. So ideally, you get that advantage over, and then teams can play. I think it's easier when 3 points, kick a goal wasn't such a big priority for teams, but now because teams can kick from 50 points. From 50 metres away, that 3 points is quite important. And I know that when you go up and referee Six Nations, 3 points is everything.
Yeah.
So potentially, they want to come back for the penalty more often than not. So calling advantage over is a bit of a risk. It's something, again, like as I said, we're constantly, as referees, trying to manage that so that we're consistent between each other. But it's one of those ones that I think we'll continue to talk about for years to come.
Speaking of, I got a text during the week from one Simon Porter. And he's got a little rule that he's been knocking the door down, and he's handed me the baton. Okay. To be the voice of this rule, and it makes sense to a point. So what he's saying is, when there's an advantage, he would like to see the team that has the advantage, the ability to kick out on the full, and they would get the line out, almost like it just avoids you going to the penalty and then going to the kick. But obviously it needs to sort of potentially have a position in the field, he's saying, so that maybe it's in your own half or whatever. What do you think of that? Does that create too much confusion?
I mean, we could do that as referees for sure. And that's one thing that whenever the rules are changed, they tell us what to do. And we can actually go out there, just apply it to the game and referee it. I think it's a great idea. I actually don't mind it.
Yeah,
because
same.
You're right. The thing is, we play advantage, and then I make the decision to come back for the penalty. Okay, here's the mark. We have another 10, 20 seconds, 30 seconds. Then they kick the ball for the line out anyway.
Because if you look at the 50-22, what I've loved, and refs have played a big part in this, is it's almost a little bit like a quick throw. Like you watch when it's 50-22, everyone just sprints that 22 and the ball's in and out, like it almost makes it like, okay, we've got the advantage, kick it out on the full when you sprint there. And, in terms of keeping the game flowing, that's one thing the 50-22's done, but this is something else that could speed up, and then you don't have to worry about the 30 seconds for players to get set. I think it's good. Any time that I can take myself out of the game, and it can be more about what the teams are trying to achieve, what they've been coached during the week, that's good. Referees, and that's something I want to sort of get across today, is that we're not trying to impose ourselves on the game constantly by blowing our whistle. Yeah. So that's something that, what Simon Porter said, that rule, I think means that the teams are taking charge again. Yeah. And so, if they can kick it out in the full, because they've got the penalty, they deserve the penalty because the opposition's infringed, they can decide what they want to do with it. And potentially that means, well, do we have more people in the back line, or do we have more people trying to defend the touchline? Does that mean there's more space open so we get that breakaway? Simon could be onto something. He could be. On the back of that, though, the common sense approach, Sam O'Reilly asks, and this is where I feel for referees, like you just can't win. I suppose it's like us as well. You're not going to please everyone. But why is the offside at kickoff not strictly enforced? Is that a common sense thing? Like if it doesn't impact the game, why would you bring it back?
Yeah, I think it's another one where we're constantly trying to make decisions like, has it impacted the game? Is it material to the outcome, or is it made it unfair to the opposition? So if we talk about a kick-off and potentially a player is maybe they've mistimed their run, okay, but it's a deep kick, the opposition's going to catch the ball, they're going to kick it out. Potentially that player that is 40 metres away, who's 1 metre in front of the kicker, hasn't had the impact on the game that necessarily you need to blow the whistle for. But as a referee, though, I'd make sure that I spotted that and then had a chat to the player at the next line-out, and then even at the next kick-off made sure that they were behind. Because if they do it a second time, then I think that trend is something you need to deal with in the game, because then those trends just becoming, they get loose and the game gets loose, there's no structure. And that's something I think as referees we want to try and get better at, so that we don't want to pick up on everything, we want to pick on things that impact the game.
But when you look at for this rule in particular, I just remember the Waratahs. Remember when Cheika got them to like that NRL style, and it actually worked against them because they were either too late for the kick and then they were behind the 8 ball, or they just had it. They were so far in front, you had to do something. Yep. Do you know what I mean? So that's why any sort of innovation in around this area has never sort of worked.
We see a lot of it in parts of the game. Is the line-out gap short? Are they standing outside the 15? There's all these small things in the game that we can keep picking up on, and constantly, I think as a referee, we're managing stuff off the ball a lot. So there's a lot of stuff that you probably don't see. That we're chatting to players, we're talking to them, we're trying to control things, which aren't necessarily, I believe, impacting the game. it's when they start impacting the game that's when we want to start blowing our whistle.
But you also know as a ref, if you don't have that little chat on the go, it'll eventually impact the game.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's just changing that.
So you're trying to, and that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to add value to the game. And I always say that adding value isn't necessarily always blowing your whistle. It's the downtime, because there's probably about 35 minutes of ball in play, maybe 40 in NPC of actual ball being thrown around. That's what we always trying to compete for against other sports. So there's another 45 minutes of the game where I can be, as a referee, managing players, talking with players to try and get that add value and that good outcome.
Is that why, like this year, and I suppose Super Rugby has its initiatives and then NPC, but man, it feels like the NPC, like I just love, whenever there's a try scored, it's just the call's made.
Yep.
You know, like human error, let's move on, and if it's major, it'll get picked up, and if not, we're away. Is that something you guys have tried to bring into the NPC?
It is. I think, and like I'm not saying this because I'm a New Zealand referee, but I think we've got some quality New Zealand referees in New Zealand. Like we've got some really good experience. We led well, and we're constantly working on, okay, what can we do to achieve that? A lot of it is working behind the scenes, having processes around, look, if we see the ball grounded, let's award the try and then use the 60 seconds we have for the conversion to see if we're right or wrong.
So good.
Instead of, let's review everything, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that balance is something that we're working on, and I think World Rugby starts seeing that, so they start following those processes too. But also, it is down to the players and the way it's been coached as well. Like it's been coached positively. We've got some great players here, and that's the product on the field. So it makes it easier for us to referee a game like that when it's been played like that by those players.
It's been noticeable, and it's just such a big difference. It's such a small thing, probably in terms of the process, because you can still achieve the same thing.
Exactly.
But just less stoppages, less time.
I personally love the not straight line out rule. I'm not sure what you think about that. But as a referee, I mentioned before that when we don't have to impose ourselves on a game to blow a scrum when the other team hasn't competed, it's not fair for them to get the ball. I like it.
It's more of an ego thing, I think, for hookers. So, but wanting to be the one that has the most straights. But yeah, I think it's been good. I think everyone's moved with it really well. But yeah, I think there's an element in the hooker fraternity that we like a little bit old school in that, and there's still current players as well, because it is a point of difference, because it is a mechanism for selection.
Well, it's a massive skill. It's a massive
when it's taken away, but it still can be a match defining. If someone gets up and you don't throw it straight, you still have to theoretically be able to do it every time.
Well, let's do a line-out question then, shall we? While we're here, from Kerry Geertsen, who's a regular of ours, he says, I understand that the players in a line-out are not allowed to leave the line of the line-out until after the hookers release the ball. Why then did Canterbury players leave the line-out and jumping in and out of the line, and in one case almost set up a maul before the hooker had thrown in? What are the rules around where you can move in a line-out?
Yeah, so a line-out like set-piece, restart and play, and there's a lot of, there's some amazing sort of moves that teams do to deceive the opposition around where their jumping pods are going to be. You can have receivers that can enter the line-out as long as they switch place so they have another receiver. You can change position in the line-out before the throw, again, as long as it happens before the throw and you set. There was recently something that World Rugby wanted us to focus on, and it was that kind of early maul setup where players would be leaving the line-out, but they would allow us to play on as long as the players didn't stop and they weren't waiting for the jumper to come down to set that maul. As long as they kept moving, they said play on. But yeah, more recently we've seen players peeling away, waiting for the jumper to come down and setting that early maul. So it's almost like they get an early 6-on-2 or 6-on-3 start to the maul, so they get a bit of a head start. So we focused on that for about a season, and then the messages just from the coaches and potentially from the players, they just said, look, we don't really see this as something that we want you guys to focus on anymore. You're taking the ball off the attack too much. So look, let's just go with that they're allowed to do it, and until we see any issues with it, we'll let you know. And I think that's the benefit of a lot of these rule changes is it's not coming from the referees. It's actually coming from work that referees are doing with coaches, with players around how players and coaches see the game and how they want to refereed. So we'll constantly have meetings through the season, but also at the start of the season with the coaches saying, look, what are the big issues in the game? How do you want it refereed? This is your competition. We'll referee it for you. How do you want it? And we'll do what they say.
So here's a question from Jacob Gianti. Suggestion, to lower penalties in a match, provide less pressure on referees, all offensive ruck penalties change to a free kick, holding on in the side, off feet, etc. What do you think about that?
Yeah, good. I think that's pretty good idea. I like where he's probably going with it to try and keep the game moving. Because it's dynamic, as a referee, I'm 3 or 4 metres from the tackle ruck. players are coming in to clean. They don't know when players have gone off their feet. They also sometimes don't know when the ruck's formed. So I'll try and use my communication as a tool to say yes, to say ruck form, to say hands off. And if I've been able to do that, I've been able to add value if the ball isn't slowed down. Now, if they've still slowed the ball down and the opposition or the team with the ball's not been able to pass it, then I'd still play advantage, okay? But if I could give that interpretation around my communication quickly so that it hasn't affected the game, then I think that's add value, so I'd always try and do that. I think around the free kick idea, it's good. I know we did that a few years ago, that every decision I think at the tackle ruck was a free kick, and it was just a free kick here, there, and the game just kept moving, it was non-stop. I actually like the idea that I'd like to encourage players that there's probably about 5 or 6 holding on penalties that we give in a game. And players over the ball and we give a penalty because the player doesn't release it on the ground. I'd like to encourage the player to have to release that ball a little bit more. So yes, it's a penalty. Maybe we go down the repeated infringement mark as well, so that if you repeatedly hold the ball on, you could be yellow carded, because we don't necessarily do that as referees. But if we can encourage players to have to release the ball, it means we get a turnover, and then we get to we get the game moving again.
It's an interesting thing you see, because I see it differently now. Like when you're a player and you got isolated, you would do anything to try and maybe squeeze the ball between your legs or not let it go. But ironically, the more I watch it just from an analytical point of view, letting it go would actually be better for you, because it's eventually going to be a penalty. And having that ability to identify, okay, well, I've actually lost this contest, let it go, and let them have the ball in their 10 metres from their goal line, they're still going to have to kick it out and you get a line out, which is much better than obviously them having a penalty kick to exit.
Totally, 100% of the time, you'll force me to make a decision to give the holding on penalty. And I think if we encourage players to release the ball, it's not, the opposition's going to get it, but they're under pressure.
Yeah.
And you might have 3 or 4 players. You could clean them over and get the ball back potentially as well.
I wish I felt like this when I played.
So that's one thing. I think with the free kick as an option as well, potentially, I wouldn't want to encourage the teams to infringe. So free kicks potentially are a lesser decision as a penalty.
If you go into a one-on-one with a coach, free kicks are never brought up. Penalties, on the other hand, are a big issue.
Yeah.
And if your team's above 10, normally if you're in that double digits, you're in trouble territory. And most of them do come on defence, offsides or breakdown infringements. And if you've got one, but you go to 2, you're probably on the pine or you're not playing. So that changes behaviour. See how it changes your training behaviour and your attitude much more, because it's a selection tool. Rather, free kick, you're sort of
And that's also I know teams, and we talk about the behaviour of referees. They know that potentially referees are going to give, you can have 2 or 3 penalties before you get that warning for a yellow card, and that's when the behaviour will change. So I think sometimes understanding what the referee does as well, what's their limit, do they go straight to a yellow card, is important, because once they then get the warning, they go, cool, it's going to be a yellow card. But sometimes it might be a straight yellow card, and if it is, that could really change their behaviour too, if they knew that could come as well.
Do you often feel like a team has scouted you well? Can you see it in a game, these guys are picking the way that I do this?
Maybe not in a game, but I think my stats are available in terms of the amount of penalties I give against the attack versus defence in the game. I know my stats are available in terms of the position of the field where I give my penalties as well. And a lot of that is down to my philosophy, the way I've sort of got my blueprints and the way that I referee a game. It should be pretty consistent across referees, and I have seen the stats between the Super Rugby referees this year, and there's not many outliers in terms of the most common penalty that we give, the balance between attack and defence. So I quite like that, but we're always week to week working on things as well. So there's some subtle things that we're trying to change to be better. Now they don't know about that, but I think the big picture they can sort of understand that. Okay, Ben's pretty hard at offsides. If you fall on the wrong side after a tackle, roll clear, because he's pretty hard on that too. And they are the kind of things I think they scout you out for before a game.
It's no different as well. You'd do the same for players and teams in terms of their I suppose, areas that they've given them a lot of penalties away?
Yeah, we don't really do particularly players. Like, it's never really like individuals. We sort of just try and, I mean, when I preview teams, I actually preview not really the decisions or the penalties that they give, because, you know, that was against another opposition. I just try and look at, okay, what's their style of play? Where do they like to attack? Are they set piece dominated? Are they orientated around the set piece? Because that means, okay, potentially if they do a lot of moves out the back of the line out, I need to stand in a different way, so I'm not going to be in the way. I'm not going to be in their passing lane. Or if they're doing a lot of sort of hit and goes off the ruck, well, okay, I can actually stand a bit wider, so I'm not in that channel too. For example, like I knew in the weekend, Hawke's Bay, Flower Whakatawa, like loves a little in pass, and how often I'm in that channel as I'm running to the next phase and play.
That's what he's normally picking on.
Yeah. So maybe I'm running that sort of blocking line. But I just needed to check my run going into that, just be a little step behind, so that they had the option, because I don't want to take the option away for the team as well, but also don't want to get in the way either. So.
Yeah, I do think though as well, like what makes him strong in that area is he's trying to bring you into the game.
Well,
do you know what I mean? Because it makes it.
Well, I don't
really
think players use us enough.
Yeah.
I reckon, you know, there's certain positions that we have to stand somewhere.
Yeah.
And this is why I think the benefit of having a referee on a training session is that, and often like players, I'll be in the way of their position with the Hurricanes who I train with. Obviously, I can't referee them. But I was like, this is where I have to stand. You know, so you either have to sort of adapt to the referee being there and pass somewhere else, or
especially like special moves, like things that you haven't shown. I remember we always had to. Well, that was a big thing of why we wanted to meet referees, whether it was in Super Rugby or NPC, to say, okay, we've got this special strike. And I'd almost say, look, I'll give you the nod when we're doing it, because at the back of a line-out where you normally stand is like where you want to attack that transition. And I always found it was quite good how referees would always buy in. They'd be like, yeah, sweet as, and then they'd just stand at the front when they knew it was happening.
It's so valuable, and like I'd always encourage every team to be able to do that if there's something like something different that I haven't been able to preview, because when a referee's surprised in the game, like we'll often make an error.
Yeah.
So if we know it's coming, we'll never share it with the opposition. Like we'll never do that.
No, 100%.
Because it's part of the fairness of the game. But if it allows you to play the move that you want to, and it encourages like a good game of rugby and maybe a good strike play, we're all for that. So I think it's really good.
No, you are. I remember Jaco Piper was the first referee, and he was like, oh, thank you. And I was like, oh, okay. Then that was just like a normal thing for me from that point of view.
What about halfbacks? You mentioned halfbacks before, and we see it obviously with the Caterpillar rucks, and we see it at the back of all sorts of rucks. When they touch the ball, the way that they pull it back or the way that they maybe nudge it back in at times, the call on whether players are offside or onside once that halfback has touched the ball, what's the law around that?
Yeah, it's a good one, and I think it's one we tested on constantly. And part of the game, I think we always get asked, look, should you be calling the ball out every time that the ball's out? Okay, and my answer to that is no, because I don't want to be talking too much in the game, because that'll become white noise, and then potentially the impact of what I'm saying, the players will sort of tune out to it. But there is a question that a lot of defensive pillars ask us, is when is that ball out? And so we're trying to discourage firstly the Caterpillar ruck. So as soon as the ball's available, we're saying use it, and it means they've got 5 seconds to be able to use the ball. And we've turned the ball over a few times this year because of that, which I think's been good. But also halfbacks have picked up on that now, so that they don't allow that. They within about 4 seconds they've done their box kick.
Yeah.
But sometimes the ball's lodged in there, and they can't use their feet to be able to bring the ball back. So we do allow them to use their hands to be able to dislodge the ball, place it down, but they must use their foot to be able to bring it all the way back to the back of the ruck to then box kick or to pass the ball.
So free it with your hands, then pull it back with your foot.
With your feet.
Yeah.
If you use your hands to bring it back, well, we interpret that and we tell players before the game that if you use your hands to bring the ball back, the ball is now out, and then any player can come around and actually go and pick up that ball as long as they're onside.
Yeah. But let's say you're allowing someone to pull it out, and the opposition are like, okay, well, he's now got his hands on the ball. Yep. Let's go. How do you make sure that they understand what's going on and that you're trying to be reasonable and keep this game going? So
a lot of it when players ask us, and we do talk to front rows before the game, but often players will come and ask us like our interpretation around, when is the ball out? And I know I do, but also other referees, we just encourage them to say, look, just quickly ask me, is the ball out, ref? And I'll say yes or no. Yes, you'll lose half a second.
Yeah.
but also you'll never be penalised if I say, yes, the ball is out. So that's what we encourage, and that's just a little bit of sort of the interpretation of, okay, this is what we're seeing. I don't see that the ball's out yet. It's still covered by someone, or it's not past the hindmost foot, or no, he was just dislodging with his hand. Let's play on. The ball's not out. But other times, when it does, you say yes, and then they go for it. And then, I think that's quite good because they're understanding the rule or understanding the laws quite well.
Chip, as a player, when you're in that position, were you quite fond of?
I was very vocal in that area. Yeah, because even if you do lose half a second, it puts you under pressure. If you're the 9 and you're hearing someone, is that ball out? Is that ball out? Oh, he likes it off his left foot. He likes it off his left foot. Do you know? Sometimes you're just saying things to get in their head. Whether you're going to take the risk or not, you're probably not. Especially if you're down and they're trying to exit. But all those sorts of questions are trying to, I suppose, play mental mind games with the halfback to rush something, because what we phrase it as players is we're always trying to disrupt and not allow them to kick on their terms or exit on their terms and put them in a position where they're uncomfortable, basically.
The moment I realised that players would be saying things like that just because it's part of their game was when I would be with trainings in Super Rugby and at lineouts they'd be yelling ref, gap, ref, gap. Well, this is a perfect gap. And I clicked, I was like, oh, they're just used to saying this now. So it meant that I could just stop worrying about the gap and move on.
It's just a distraction.
But then there's that difference, I suppose, between a conversation with any player on the field and the time where only the captain's allowed to talk. And how do you make sure that there's a clear line there where, get the hell out of here, in comparison to, hey, we've been talking merrily at the ruck for the last 5 minutes, kind of thing?
Yes, I think that's down to a little bit around the personality of the referee, what they allow, because I think it's important that I am giving direction to the players so they understand what I'm seeing, and that may mean the front row, and that might not be the captain, but also maybe jacklers that are going for the ball. Like the reason that you didn't get a penalty last time is because your hand touched the ground, or I'm not seeing a two-handed lift. In those moments when the game stopped, I'm constantly working with the captains, with players, with certain individuals so that we can actually get a better outcome. So I'm personally pretty vocal like that, but there is a line, right? So I know that if I'm opening the door up to talk to players, they can definitely, ask me questions as well, and I think that's a good part of the game. But there is a line where it becomes, you're asking too much. Maybe you're actually being quite negative now. They normally don't get verbally sort of abusive at all. Like, that's really good. Like, it's a good part about rugby compared to probably other sports. And then if it's anything team related around repeat infringements, foul play, something at TMO, then I think you have the respect with the captain to be able to deal with the captain on those terms. To say, look, this is what I'm seeing. Your team's under pressure. There's been 3 or 4 repeat infringements. This is the behaviour change I need for you to tell your team to change.
Yeah, I think it's massive in teams as well, and I think it's probably got better now. Refs have been in environments, but you do talk about this and plan as a team, and I think it's more, the big message you normally give is just don't bring the referee into the fixture for no reason, through your own individual frustration of your performance. Like, if it's a genuine need to ask a question, answer it, then absolutely. But most of the time it's like, we'll go through the skipper if there's time. But if there's not time, then any time we waste here is time we've wasted not getting set. And if we're slow and hesitant defensively, that's when opportunity is created. So I think there is a balance, but I also think there's a time and place for those conversations. And normally, refs would, I know when I was captain, refs were pretty clear, there's time and place, and if I can't answer it, James, next stoppage. Something like that. And at least because you've had that conversation in a calm setting before the game, when it gets to that moment, that's the process. And if you overstep it, you're going to be punished.
You're totally right. And I think it is an important relationship, that captain to referee, because the captain wants to know, how are you interpreting this? Okay? So there's a communication channel there that should remain open. But there have been certain times, and look, I've been guilty of it as well, where you lose a captain, either through actions of what they've done, they've annoyed you psychologically, you're in the red as well, and then so you just go, look, we've lost that communication channel. So any time that I've got an issue with your team, well, I'm not talking to you anymore. So you sort of lose that benefit, and I reckon to try and always within a game get back to a position where at least talking to the captain is good for the game.
Yeah, if you look at other sports, I think rugby gets it pretty.
No, rugby's great. I mean, I could never officiate any of those other sports we're talking about. I think rugby's great. There's tough conversations. There's frustration, but I think there's always respect there.
And a lot of proactive conversations, like in terms of like the reason why we got you on here is to understand how much work goes in. And I suppose to segue to this question is like, if World Rugby was to rank like fixtures, like this is the number one fixture, this number, how does game allocation work? How do you get your game?
So World Rugby, they don't rank, I guess, the games in terms of like this is the top game this window. So let's look at November, right? So we know the All Blacks, they're going up the Northern Hemisphere, they'll have games, but so will South Africa, so will Australia, so they're all playing big games up there. World Rugby sits down probably 6 weeks beforehand, so we've all been given our appointments now, and they go through and go, okay, these are the tier one games, the two tier one countries playing. So they're not ranked per se, but these are the big games, okay? We probably have about 20 World Rugby referees that are available to referee in those fixtures, and within that is probably a top 10. So again, we're not really ranked, but they have their top 10 or their top 5. They can sort of do those games. Then it just comes down to obviously which nation's involved, because you can't referee your own country. I can't referee the All Blacks. And also who have you refereed before and how do those games go as well. So it kind of is, it's around the table discussion with our managers, so at World Rugby, our selectors at World Rugby as well, and they just pick who they think is the best fit for the games coming up.
That's interesting. And then in the post of that, what's the review look like at the end of that test season, and the way that they look at you and ask you questions about how things have gone, or how does that work?
So the review doesn't just happen at the end of the test season, it's after every game.
Yeah.
So we'll go through that fixture on a Saturday. I would have done my full review, and it takes me a good sort of 4 hours to go through a game of stop-start, go through every decision, go through every non-decision, so a decision I should have blown, look at my positioning, my communication with the players, the captains, all that detail, and we're coding it and we're clipping it, and I'll send that to my coach and my assessor, and then we'll have a meeting on the Monday and go through all the detail, and hopefully it lines up. So the errors that I had, the things I did well, should all line up. And we'll talk about that and discuss that. We'll then go through the clips that have been sent from the coaches as well, because that's really important, because we'll give feedback to them so that they can start training and be ready for their next test match. And then we'll be given a percentage, we'll be given a percentage accuracy score of how we refereed the game, and overall fixture management as well. And then based on that, now I know that this really isn't public, but based on that reflects on how we're appointed for the next window. So after November, we'll go through and do all our games. We'll do our assessments after every game. But then after the whole window, they'll look at all the referees' performances and then look at the Six Nations appointments. And then they'll go through, these are the referees that performed really well. These are the ones that are going to referee Six Nations. And then potentially there'll be some referees, and it did happen in June, July in Rugby Championship. They weren't appointed to Rugby Championship games because of how they were perceived to have performed before that. So there is accountability. I know that's not really publicised. There is accountability in terms of, I guess, the way that referees are then selected for the following games.
So what's a good percentage? You mentioned there's a percentage. Are you allowed to say this?
No. I mean, so for me, so quality refereeing decisions, I want to make sure, and I should be at a level that every decision, every time I blow my whistle, should be 100% accurate.
Yeah.
So I should be able to see a decision that happens in front of me. I should be able to process it and be able to, yes, whistle. And then when I look at it on review, when I look at it with the different angles, I should be correct 100% of the time.
Yes.
And so that's something I've been working on this year, a lot. And I haven't always been 100% in the decisions I've always made, but I've only probably made one or two errors in a game, and then I'll be looking at those errors. But okay, why did I make that? Was it the position? Did I just make an error? Was I blocked? And then you have the overall sort of fixture management, and that sort of takes into account some of the non-decisions, maybe some of the HIDs, which is a high impact decision you get right or wrong, either through the TMO. And the thing is, in a game of rugby, the perfect game of rugby is that I think you should be able to, all the whistle decisions are correct, but there's a lot of decisions in the game that, there was a side entry at the tackle ruck you missed. Well, I did see that, but I decided not to blow it because I didn't think it was impact. But then when the assessors do it, they say, look, that was a non-decision that you should have got. So that percentage in terms of overall management can come down a little bit. But that's what we're trying to work at. The perfect game's a hard one to sort of quantify, but it's certainly something we're always trying to sort of find.
I think for the game, if we look at it as a spectacle, you'd rather less whistle. Yep. And then maybe learn from that to maybe lessen the amount of those. But I like that philosophy like
Well,
that.
I've been working on this year, and last weekend I blew 8 penalties in the game, so single digits. I've never done that in my career. Like you sort of average about 18 to 20 penalties in the game, and it's not a number that you ever try and get. But what I've been trying to work on this year is, okay, what type of penalty count did this game actually need? And I reckon the game in the weekend, so Canterbury Hawke's Bay, the game was pretty positive. We got a lot of good turnovers, advantage over. It was probably an 8 or 9 penalty count game, just the way that it was played. So it meant that I didn't over under referee it. Then sometimes you get a game that potentially the same game, but if you found 10 other penalties to blow, then maybe you've over refereed that, and then you've blown your whistle too much. So we're constantly trying to think of like those ways, like, and how we're reviewing the game. We don't just walk off and go, cool, game done. So it's a difficult one.
If you, a family member or a friend, wants to get into rugby shape, we have the giveaway to suit. Along with All Blacks trainer Dr. Nick Gill's Rugby Ready team, we're trying to get the rugby community, whether you're a player or fan, fit and strong. Each week, one winner will receive 4 weeks of free access to the Rugby Ready Before membership, with full access to all of Dr. Nick Gill's pre-season, in-season, off-season and specialty programs to help take your game to the next level. And a huge congratulations to this week's winner, Bradley Kershaw. You've scored 4 weeks of free access to the Rugby Ready Before membership. Thanks again to everyone who entered. We loved reading your stories, and if you didn't win this time around, don't worry, you're still in the running. So keep those amazing submissions coming, and it could be your name we announce next week. And if you want in, it's simple. Just DM Rugby Ready on Instagram with the code ARP and tell them why you'd love to win. And of course, if you miss out, you can get 75% off memberships through ARP by going to the link or using the QR code below. So, Ben here, of course, is involved in one of those semi-finals on the weekend, as we were talking about before, but there were 2 cracking games. I suppose the first half of both of them, both teams are in, and then the second half was where things really changed. We'll make that our Ashley and Martin turning point for the week. Jipper, when you look at those second halves, what is the difference between Otago and Canterbury and the 2 Bay teams as far as being able to finish it off?
Styles. Like they say, styles make fights, but both Hawke's Bay and Bay of Plenty just chance their arm way more. So if we use it from a statistical point of view, basically Otago and Canterbury sort of operated around that sort of 90% of the time, or 0.91 of the time, they're taking a carry to then manipulate the defence, whereas it's around sort of 0.6 to 0.7 for Hawke's Bay and Bay of Plenty, and that's just the way they play. But due to the inaccuracy or the mistakes, that just allowed, I suppose, Otago and Canterbury to play one at the right end of the field, but also put them under pressure through those turnover situations. And then I do think because the scores sort of blew out to a margin, both those sides started chasing it, which increased the turnover. It's just classic sort of Canterbury style, but it's also something Otago's starting to be known for, is their suffocation through their kick strategy or their defensive pressure to force errors. Those 2 teams have done it all season. Like they will, when I say that carry to pass ratio is 60% of the time they'll carry, and the other 40% they'll pass, but whereas Canterbury and Otago are 90% of the time they'll carry, 10% pass. So they wait for the perfect picture to strike, versus we're going to have a lick a few more times and see how we go.
That's one thing I noticed. Like I refereed both those teams this year, and you sort of notice as a referee whether you're running left to right a lot across the field, or whether they're kicking a lot, so you're just standing in the middle of the field. And that's one thing I noticed, I think, Otago, Northern, and then Canterbury, Taranaki, where they just kept moving forward in the middle of the field, and you're just watching it happen as a referee as they keep going forward. It was, it's an interesting change in style.
Yeah, and it's effective, and it's... Look, I think if these games were played in the afternoon, I honestly reckon it would change the picture a bit in terms of just the dewy conditions. And I know it's under the roof, but it's still very dewy underneath the roof at that time. Like an afternoon kickoff would that's the beauty of NPC, is everyone's trying to play helter-skelter. But the 2 teams that have made the final have probably been the most measured throughout the comp.
Looking at this final though, Jip, there's a couple of key things. The fact that the All Blacks aren't there, and we're talking about fringe All Blacks and Bell and Darry, who for Canterbury were incredible, have been there through that time, and then suddenly they're gone. How much of an impact is that going to be, let's say, in comparison to the All Blacks who've come back for a couple of weeks and then see you later?
Yeah, well, I think at hooker it could, I noticed Brody McAllister wasn't on the bench on the weekend, and then George Bell that was a hell of a game.
He was into everything.
It was, I reckon, one of his best games he's played for Canterbury. So that could impact a lot. Like Otago do have the best line-out. They have the best line-out stats in terms of winning, but also disrupting. So that will play a part. But as we know with most sides, if you do struggle at line-out time, they'll look for quick throws. So I think from a strategy point of view, Cam Miller and Sam Gilbert are so on at the moment that they'll know, kick it into the stands, force them into those line-outs. And Sam Darry, obviously, again, it comes back to the set piece. I think it is big holes. I genuinely do. But, man, I think with Canterbury, there's just been times, even with the counties quarter-final, you thought, oh, could they just not be peaking at the right time? But they've found a way to win. And I do think you've seen that a lot. They haven't had the All Blacks all year consistently, but every time, even that Northland game, we go back to that Northland game, for them to put themselves in a position where they should have lost, they drew it, they put themselves in a position to win. They will, it doesn't matter the occasion or the contest, they'll be there at the end. But yeah, look, I think, I'd like to say hometown advantage. I just think Otago, like they just seem very meticulous, whether it's wet weather, dry weather, under a roof. They know where they want to play the game and they don't take too many risks, and they're very accurate with their kick.
Mark Brown appears to be a sharp operator. Like, I'd never heard of him really before, but he seems to be a sharp operator. Yeah, and he's spent some time in Canterbury as well. But like, I interviewed Sam Gilbert when they were on that run. They'd won the Shield, and they were just not losing. And I just said, what sort of credit do you give to your coaches? He just basically said he makes them believe in themselves and believe in something, I suppose, greater than themselves, and the Big O and the history of the Otago jersey. And you've even seen some of the legends and Latter and co, really trying to pump up the crowds and get them along. And I have no doubt there'll be a lot of blue and gold. Even at the game, it was in Ashburton, Mid-Canterbury versus Thames Valley. So not even an Otago team inside. Everyone's wearing Otago jerseys in the crowd, Like there is going to be a good old school, hopefully, full crowd Otago versus Canterbury doozy. Yeah. When you have these referee meetings before these games, sometimes do you talk to the coaches and be like, geez, this guy switched on. Like he's got something going on this week. I've got a feeling that this team's going to hit it.
Yeah, like you get a sense of that sometimes, like especially some coaches, they send clips out before the game, so just to clue you up to maybe what they're trying to achieve. But also, you do get a sense when you go into the changing room before a game, the style of the team, like, how they're feeling, just that atmosphere. And that's cool because it's part of the game. Like, our game starts, at the front row chat, the coin toss, and then we start warming up. So it's exciting for that. And I think, both these teams are going to show that this weekend. I know the referee that's going to go out into the middle there is going to enjoy that.
Yeah, it's not you.
No, not me. It's not me this weekend.
You're off to Japan.
I'll be in Japan, so I'll be watching it from afar.
Yeah. Are you allowed to make picks? Is that?
Look, honestly, so firstly, my pick is that the referee will always get it right.
Yeah.
But what I've loved about NPC this year is that, genuinely, we've got two great teams in the final. And it's going to be a great final that I think either could win. It's going to be a great game. Yeah,
it's that unpredictability result. It is quite hard to pick. I do want to say one last thing as well. They're the two teams that were most efficient in the 22. I don't know if you feel that as refs, but when they get in there, they come away with points. Both 6 out of 9 entries last week, and you'll get less than that. I don't think either side will get 9 this week. So being clinical when down there, compared to the other sides, they're around sort of 10 entries with only sort of 2 or 3, makes a big difference.
Yeah, it does. I feel that after the counties game.
Yeah. Oh, still the most defenders beaten in a NPC match though.
But we saw that again with Bay of Plenty and Hawke's Bay. We saw them constantly break the line. We saw them have more line breaks than Otago and Canterbury, and it didn't matter. No, and it's just where they play. Like, all their exit is through the boot, both sides. They just will not risk playing down their end. Right, so was that an Otago for you? I think so, yeah. Is that based on the fact that you...
I do want to see, you never know, the All Blacks may leave late, those two in particular. They may release them, I'm not too sure. So I think that does play a pretty big role. But Finn Hurley back, they've got good impact across that bench. And yeah, I think they've just got a belief.
Yeah.
Belief.
Here we go. That's very powerful. Enjoy Japan, mate.
Thank you.
It'll be good. We'll see if we can send Bryn Hall up to look after you. I'm sure he's got the context.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on, mate.
Cheers,
Enjoy
mate.
the end of your tour. Thank you very much for joining us on the show. We'll catch you again next week. Remember, we've got Andrew Goodman from the Ireland team as our guest next week. So he's got plenty of interesting things to say. Such an up-and-comer in the coaching game and just a smart bloke in general. Thank you to Ashley and Martin Medical Hair Centres for looking after the show. And thank you to everybody behind the scenes who makes this thing happen. Mā te wā.